so much for joining me today. In these uncertain times, it makes me so happy that we are all able to come together and prepare for your college admissions together.
So much for joining me today.
Sorry, I got my signed up here. Here we go. So I'll let me get started here.
So yeah, I'd like to introduce myself, and then Lindsey can introduce herself. My name is Michaela. I'm lucky to be one of the counselors here at Moon Prep. I was previously an admissions counselor at a Big Ten university. I think it's really important to know where people come from when we're on these webinars, so you know what questions you can ask us from our own backgrounds. So hopefully we want to share a little bit about that. But I was previously an admissions counselor and also an honors recruiter at a Big Ten university. So I've been sitting right in that seat reading hundreds of applications from students who were clearly prepared for their college application, and also reading applications that were clearly written the night before. So tonight we're going to be talking about kind of a checklist of action plans that you can focus on now, even if you're an underclassman or if you have just started your senior year, so you're not scrambling last minute on any piece of that college admissions puzzle. Before I was an admissions counselor, I worked as a staff writer for a national magazine as well. And then, so I like to bring this behind the scenes knowledge to everybody from my time in admissions, but also as a writer. And now I have a guest blog contributing author page on niche.com, which is where everybody goes to kind of like do their college list when they're trying to figure out, what's the best pre-med programs in the country. Everybody heads over to niche.com because they rank schools, and you can see a bunch of my articles there as well.
Yeah, and my name is Lindsey, and I'm also a counselor here at Moon Prep. I've worked as a writer and an SAT, ACT tutor for the past 5 years or so, and I work one-on-one with students as well to help them raise their academic profile, so students of all ages. And my passion is really helping students create a compelling personal statement and ultimately emerge as a stronger writer. And just like Michaela, I do a lot of the writing here at Moon Prep, and I have interviewed admissions officers at colleges, medical schools, and competitive summer camps, as well as other leaders in the university and medical school admission industry. And ultimately, my goal is to help stay on top of the news, just like Michaela, and always be bringing the top-notch knowledge to you all. And just as a quick reminder before we get too far into it, you can definitely hit subscribe or like to the video. We do tons of webinars each month, so it's not just limited to this one. So make sure to hit subscribe because we will have a ton of webinars in the upcoming months. Michaela's doing one in just a couple weeks about scholarships. We'll have a whole Q&A section, walk you through the application process. But today, that's not what we're focusing on, and I'll let Michaela keep on talking.
Yeah, you can also subscribe to our newsletter as well. That's on our blog page. So we spend our time, on webinars and subscribing to all these different, newsletters and news sources. And then we compile it all into a newsletter for you guys every month as well. So you can kind of subscribe to us for a one-stop shop for all admissions news. We just really like to spend our time making sure that everyone that stays in touch with us knows everything we know. So anyway, now Lindsey and we spend our time working as independent counselors at Moon Prep. And we want to share a little bit about what Moon Prep is so that you know who we are and what we're doing behind the scenes. Moon Prep is made up of a team of independent college counselors who work with students virtually, and we guide students through not only the college admissions process, but also high school. If you have questions about classes that you want to take and you're a sophomore or something like that, we're here to guide all of that stuff too. The counselors at Moon Prep, we serve as a guide and mentor to every student, younger or a senior, helping narrow down career interest, to choose a major, or finding a summer research opportunity, or even an internship, or even a shadowing experience. We help students track down all of those. We also help students build their strongest possible applicant profile so that when their senior year rolls around, they are the most competitive candidate for even the most selective student or university, sorry. And with our rising seniors, of course, we help guide students through their college applications so nothing is missed and help brainstorm the perfect college essays based on the hundreds of effective ones we've seen in our years with Moon Prep or before Moon Prep. And essentially, we're working with students in a one-on-one capacity. We don't follow a typical Monday through Friday 9 to 5 schedule. We work nights, weekends in various time zones. Like I have a call with a student at 9 p.m. tonight after these webinars. So basically whenever it's convenient for the student. And we just kind of fill that gap that may arise from a busy high school counselor who might not have time to help with like so much detail with every student on their list. We also haven't met many high school counselors who proofread students' essays on a Saturday night or hop on a Zoom call to help a student submit an application at 10 p.m. And that's exactly what we do, and that's exactly where we come in. Our company is pretty unique because we accept only a limited number of students for each counselor, so we can completely focus on our students' individual needs and even work with medical school applicants and grad school applicants too. We have a focus on highly selective college admissions and also direct medical programs, which are often referred to as BSMD programs. And also our counselors meet regularly to share advice about our students. So the cool thing is when you work with one of us, you're kind of working with all of us, which is pretty unique. But okay, so let's just jump right in. We wanted to make sure that this was beneficial for you outside of just this webinar as well. So since it's our job at Moon Prep to guide students through every step of the college process, we know exactly where to start, and that is early. It's really never too early to get started on anything on the college application checklist. You can never be too prepared. So if you find yourself wanting a little bit more personalized advice after this, we create a special just for you to utilize an hour of our advice, or even if you want to use it as essay brainstorming time, literally anything you need within like an hour of advice. It's right there as a special for you to utilize. I probably work with about 10 to 12 seniors every year, in addition to my underclassmen. And every single year, it's the same. The students that sign up for Moon Prep earlier, before the summer, before their senior year, or even earlier, like junior, senior year, they start immediately working on their Common App and their activities and their essays, and they're able to enjoy their senior year because they get all these things off the list first. And we always have a few students join like right away in October, about 30 days before their major essays are due, their major deadlines are due, and they have to start from scratch on all of these same items, and they're just frantic, they're super stressed, they're juggling their tough senior year classes because, of course, teachers don't give you a break during college application season. And then they're also writing all their essays. And honestly, their essays suffer for it, and so do their college acceptances. So just a little bit of planning right now on the stuff we're going to talk about, whether you are a new senior or an underclassman, it can really save you so much time. And we're just here to help. So if you want some advice, just reach out after the webinar. But this advice is really universal too. I just want you to know that this is also for students who are pursuing in-state colleges as well as Ivy League schools or BSMD programs. This advice is really universal for any student.
Yeah. Okay. So I just also wanted to give a quick reminder. This is definitely a Q&A function at the end, and we'll kind of stop in the middle too if you have any questions as you go along. So feel free to use the chat section on the side. We can answer your questions. It doesn't have to be necessarily about the content we're covering. It can be kind of more broad to college admission. So feel free to use that chat section. We'll answer your questions as we go along. But first, let's spend a few minutes discussing the application routes available to you. So this is really important for kids of every single age to be thinking about because it really helps you build a more strategic college list. So the more selective colleges like Vanderbilt, Duke, they will always have an early application deadline. But they don't make it easy for you because there'll always be different types of deadlines. So for example, there's something called early decision. An early decision deadline is binding. And you also might come across something called early action. And now early action, on the other hand, those are a published date that an application date that's not binding. So you can submit as many schools as you want to early action, and you don't have to commit to going there. Whereas early decision, if you get into your one early decision school that you're allowed to submit to, you are basically committing to going there. So that's why you can kind of see here that early decision, you have to really think it through. You have to be choosing wisely. However, for the early action, you'll see that most state universities will have an early scholarship or honors deadline, and then they'll also have a regular decision deadline in the spring, or often even rolling admissions. Now, for rolling admissions, that means that you could find out, 2 weeks, 30 days, or longer, depending on the application season, how many applications they've received. So rolling decisions can be really attractive if you want to, maybe get a quicker answer if they offer it. Not all schools will offer all of these different options, so it's important to be paying attention to what the schools are offering and what they mean. And now for regular decision, it's also a popular choice because students who aren't ready to apply early or apply during this route kind of as their backup schools or even maybe their long shot schools, this can be like a good option for you. These deadlines are typically in January, maybe some in February, but we kind of advise that you apply earlier on the list. So these deadlines are right around the corner. I think UNC has one of the earlier deadlines, and it's October 15th. A lot of other schools have a deadline November 1st and November 15th. So that's right around the corner. There's a lot of writing to do. So if you're a senior and you haven't started writing your personal statement, you haven't started writing your supplemental essays, the time to start is like literally right now, because I cannot tell you enough that this is, the time will go by quicker than you think.
Mhm.
So you might be wondering, if early decision is binding, you're committing to go there, why would you want to be applying under this deadline? Well, the benefit of applying to this is you get quite a big admission acceptance rate boost. So for example, Duke University offers early decision, and typically their acceptance rate for regular decision is maybe 5%. But if you apply early decision, they accept about 20% of their early decision students. So if you're within the reach of Duke's stats, it's a reach, but it's not like, a super, super reach. Applying early decision might be a strategic move for you because you have a better shot of getting in. And most schools, because it is binding, they tend to accept more of their early decision schools. So it can be really to your advantage to at least pick your top school and apply early decision if they have it. Now for early action, you won't see as big of an admission boost just because it isn't as binding, or isn't binding at all. So the advantage of it is that you'll typically find out earlier that you got in rather than the regular decision. So it just gives you more time to be planning, figuring out what your next move is, deciding maybe if you want to apply to some more colleges. So if you have any questions about early decision, which any of these means, feel free to ask, and we are going to be, we'll be more than happy to help with that. But this is kind of the admission deadline that I was talking about earlier. And so as you can see, early applications are really kicking off in the next couple of weeks. And we'll kind of follow a set timeline. So most early deadlines for early action are going to be November 1st, November 15th. And for early decision, you'll know by the new year. So that's also another attractive reason. While your peers are kind of stressed out, wondering in January if they're going to get in anywhere, you already have your spot secured. So another huge advantage of early decision. And for January, that's when you see the regular. You won't find out until March or April. So you really have a long time to stress about this if you're not applying early action or early decision. And then, of course, May 1st is traditionally the decision date. Who knows what it will be like this year with coronavirus, if they'll change it again. But for the most part, that's typically what you'll see. And kind of understanding about the deadlines is going to be really important for the college list. So especially if you're a junior, and if you're a senior, you should already have your college list. But if you don't, now is really the time to kind of think about it and to be strategic with it. So for rising seniors, you're not going to be able to change a lot about your application. You already have your GPA, maybe your SAT or ACT score, maybe some APs, maybe SAT subject tests. You already have developed those teachers for recommendations. You already have built your resume up. So you already basically know what you're dealing with. So, and for juniors, of course, you have some time to mess with it, but this can be something that you're starting to work on now as well. So the way to focus really for the next kind of steps in the process, if you haven't done so already, is to make a college list. So you can even, and we'll talk about ways that you can still be building up your application during COVID. We'll talk about that later with Michaela. But something you can be doing now during quarantine, during the school year, especially if you're a junior, is by finalizing your college list. And for seniors as well, making sure that you are starting to think about how you're going to apply to schools, which schools you're going to apply to. So we really recommend that you categorize your college list into 3 different groups. So safeties, safety school has requirements that are below what yours are. So your GPA is higher than the average student. Your SAT or ACT score, if you're submitting it, is higher than the average. And the acceptance rate is at least like 45%. Like your chances of getting in are pretty good. As for a match, that means your qualifications, your SAT, your GPA are about the same as what the school typically accepts. And the acceptance rate maybe will be between 20 and 40%. Whereas a reach, your qualifications will be a little bit less than the average student. So maybe your GPA is a little bit lower, your SAT score is a little bit lower. And a big other kicker too is that the acceptance rate is 15% or less. So that's kind of a big point too, because no matter who you are, if you're the top in your class, you got a perfect GPA, you got a perfect SAT score, Harvard is a reach for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. Just because they have to turn down fantastic students just like you every year. So those are reaches. That's kind of how you categorize it. So we recommend here at Moon Prep that you split your list, kind of 3 schools in each category. But if you're applying to Ivy League schools or really competitive programs like BSMD schools, you might be wanting to apply to a couple more schools, especially in the reach category. So maybe 7 to 10 schools in the reaches, and then matches and safeties, you can continue with the 3s if you'd like. But the reason why having a college list is so important, because you're really starting to build the foundation for your college plan. You're starting to look and see, doing some research into the school, seeing what their applications are, what their deadlines are, kind of understanding the school a little bit better, which will be key to your success in college admissions. And we do have some action steps for you. So I know that, college admissions, has kind of gone a little bit off the wall here, and that COVID has maybe derailed everyone's plans for taking tests this fall. And we've already seen a lot of schools go test optional or, test blind. So it's really important to be looking right now what schools are requiring for next year. So if you're a junior, seeing what your schools are requiring of their students. If they're test optional, that means that they'll accept it, they'll look at it if you submit it, but they won't hold it against you if they do. If they're test blind, that means you often can't even submit it, and if you do submit it, they're not even going to look at it. But regardless, I do recommend that you try and take the SAT or ACT. If you do really great, it can only help your application, and if you don't do as well as you'd hoped, a lot of the times you might not have to submit it. So especially for this year, maybe not next year for juniors. I think some schools, have you heard a lot about next year, Michaela? Are they planning on continuing the test optional for next year?
Like some schools are definitely continuing this trend, and then some schools are only like planning on it for this year. I feel like I've seen pretty much like 50-50. So
that's
we're
what I'm
going to see over the next year, like what's going to happen. But right now it's 50-50.
Yeah, and that of course could change. It could be a little bit more attractive on the test optional side. But as of right now, as Michaela said, 50-50. So, kind of play to the odds. Assume that they will have to submit. At least one of your schools will want it. So that's why we recommend that you taking it, getting it out of the way as soon as possible. If you can safely do it, that's kind of the key. So you can start studying now. There's a lot of great resources available. And actually, if you check out our blog at moonprep.com/blog, we wrote an article just a couple weeks ago about, some great resources that we can share with you guys as well. But also, if you have any questions about what test optional means, test blind, test, what about the SATs, feel free to ask us in the chat. But another way that you can start to be preparing for your applications, even if you're a younger student, is you will have to be asking a teacher, a coach, or an outside recommendation school counselor for, that letter. It can be harder to do this if you're doing it virtually, but there are tons of time because you want to be, especially if you're a junior, this is kind of the time that you're going to be cultivating those relationships because you want to ask a recent teacher. So a lot of the times you'll be asking at the end of your junior year. If you're a senior and you're still thinking about who you should ask, it should be someone who's recent, someone who's kind of seen you excel in the classroom. You don't want a generic letter of recommendation. So try and decide who can really help elevate your application. So for this reason, it can kind of be helpful to ask them with plenty of time. If you're a senior and you have not asked yet, make sure to get on it, especially if you're planning on applying in mid-October or November. Ask today if you haven't asked already. So whenever you do ask, it's a good idea to give them a copy of your resume, maybe put together a little questionnaire so that they can maybe remember the highlights of your time with them. You can tell them what your intended major is and why you chose this field, maybe how their class kind of encouraged you to pursue this field, or any other relevant projects that you might have, encountered while you were there in that classroom. And then last thing that we kind of recommend is to attend virtual campus visits. So I've been working a lot with my juniors on this actually, is we made a spreadsheet. We have a list of the schools that they're interested in, and then they're writing notes on it as well. So it can be really easy to just kind of passively go through these virtual campus visits, but that's not the point of these. The point is to really start engaging and to learn more about the schools. So we recommend that you use the email address you plan on applying with later so that they can kind of track how interested you are in the school. You should be engaging with them in social media. You should be signing up for newsletters. No matter what year you are, this isn't just applying to the juniors. You can be starting to do college visits. Like the best time for virtual visits is really now because everyone is offering them. They have a lot of interactive virtual information sessions too. It's not just like a video that you're watching. So it can be really helpful for you to understand the school a little bit better. A lot of schools do track demonstrated interest, and they like to see that you're responding to email campaigns, that you're opening up emails, that you're clicking on links, because they want to make sure that if they do accept you, you're committing. And with that being said, you obviously will still have until May 1st to visit the school before you commit. So when possible, when you can safely do it, visit the school in person. But for now, virtual will kind of be a good backup plan. Okay.
And, Lindsey, you're talking about how your students are doing a spreadsheet of all the virtual campus visits. So I have another action step that students can do too, since they have more time at home right now. There's absolutely no reason why students can't be spending more time or their extra time building a spreadsheet of scholarships to apply for during your senior year and writing those essays in advance. If you're a sophomore or a junior, you can be doing this now because those essay prompts for outside scholarships, like local ones or national ones from scholarships.com and everything, like those essay prompts don't change from year to year. So you can start writing those now. And chances are, if the essay prompt somehow does change, I promise you can reuse that essay. So it's not a big deal at all. So sophomores, juniors, like this is what you should be doing. Make a spreadsheet of all the scholarships you can find, local ones, national ones, and start writing those essays in advance, even a year or 2 years in advance. Totally fine. Searching for scholarships and adding them to a big old spreadsheet is absolutely something you can do while you binge watch a show, throw on The Office, and I swear, 3 hours later, you'll have a list of like 40 to 50 scholarships. It's that easy. And honestly, you'll be surprised how many you can find once you start looking. It's pretty crazy. And if you want all of my tips on how to find all these external scholarships, we have a full webinar again coming up in just a couple weeks on the 23rd. And then also, I think we have like some resources as well. We have a ton of articles I've written on our blog and on niche.com. I also guest posted a blog on like college savings.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, it's fine. It'll be on the blog. But here's where Michaela guest posted something. So, but join our webinar to ask all those questions too. So a lot of things that I'm asked right now by my students is how can I possibly turn this quarantine time into an actual resume booster? Because everything is being canceled. You know, if you're in robotics and then you have all of your robotics competitions completely canceled. So this is like what's on everybody's mind is how in the world do I turn this time into like something productive? How do I continue building an activities resume for college when all of my competitions and events have been canceled, debate, everything like that? So now is the time to explore ways to add activities to your resume that can be virtual or just done from your home. One idea is to reach out to local nonprofits to see if you can help them coordinate volunteers virtually, or you can even offer to build, a nonprofit, local company, a new website or social media platform. You can also look into asking to do an online internship with just an interesting company. And this might just be like sending out emails to businesses that you really like or might be in your future field. And you can also reach out to local news stations and offer to write a blog or an article from a student's perspective on classes moving online, or, potentially having your graduation online, or especially with a lot of schools doing like a hybrid of being in school a couple days a week and some of them being online. That's something that's like super fascinating right now. I see reporters and journalists requesting stories like that all the time. So reach out to your local news stations and just see if there's something you can do from a creative writing standpoint to get something on your resume like that. Just try to be published. You could also try out a small fundraiser in your community to donate to the local hospital and get your local news station to cover the story. Again, they love highlighting good deeds done by young students. And then another idea would be to start a food drive in your community, contacting a local food bank to see like what items are lacking and in really big need right now. And then you can use social media to organize deliveries. Just build up your activities in other ways, like find creative ways that would look really good to colleges to show them that you're using this time super constructively. Just be careful that what you're adding doesn't look like you're just desperately filling your resume with just anything. In the end, colleges don't want cookie cutter applicants who are just doing what every other person in their school is doing. Colleges want genuine candidates with unique and genuine interests. So my pro tip for this year, if you're an undergrad or if you just started your senior year, if you still feel like your activities list is just a little bit lacking and you're like, I only have like 4 or 5 things and they're all kind of scattered, they don't really look like a cohesive, like this makes sense as like a theme that I'm like obviously going towards medical school, but maybe I have like just leadership and journalism and like one medical thing, things like that. If it's all kind of scattered, if you want some creative ideas, just look at your resume, write everything out that you've done, look at each item on your resume that's already there, and just see if there's an opportunity to just bump it to the next level. So, for example, let's say that you've done Model UN since middle school and you're an absolute pro and everybody in your school knows it. Well, you could just self-publish a book on Amazon, which is pretty easy nowadays, to help like newbies understand the basics and the terminology or even navigate their first conference. So now you have an impressive new item on your resume, a brand new item, because publishing a book looks awesome, obviously, but also ties into something that you've already had on your resume for years. So it all clicks together, it makes sense for universities, but they're also seeing that you're like maximizing maximizing the things on your resume. You're maximizing the potential of things you're involved in. These are the things that really impress schools, when you can take things to different levels and you're not just doing things on a surface level. So, for example, another example, one of my own rising senior students has a parent who's a dentist. His dad experienced a shortage from his medical supplier of those face shields that dentists wear during examinations. And since my student had solid experience in 3D modeling and printing, because he competed in robotics for years and years, he designed and printed face shields to help supply local dentists who use that same medical supplier, so they could continue to work their essential jobs back in March. But essentially, he assessed the problem at hand, and he realized he had his own knowledge and tools built from his extracurriculars, and he used them to save the day. So he is showing colleges that he's going to assess a situation, and he's going to use the tools at his disposal to maximize his time during downtime, during quarantine. Like, no matter what happens, he's going to do something constructive. He's going to maximize the things on his list. So that's really just important. That's what they're looking for, honestly. And let's talk about the Common App next, because that's really what students, especially seniors, are really focused on right now. So the Common App is really kind of the last thing to mark off your list, but it also has multiple steps within it. So students tend to look at college applications as singular, like they only have to complete the Common App essay and then they're done. But for most students, the average number of schools they plan to apply to is about 7 schools, maybe. If you have 3 reaches, 3 safeties, 3 matches, maybe one other school thrown in there, that's just a very, very, very average if you're planning on kind of like staying in state. So let's just pretend you're a little bit above average and you're planning to apply to like 10 or 12 schools. For the most part, these schools will not only require the Common App essay, they'll also probably have a supplemental essay or even 3 for each school. Like, even just take UGA. It's a University of Georgia. So it's just a university school, and I think they have 2 or 3 different supplemental essays. So just applying to an in-state college, you can have 3 or 4 essays just wrapped up in one application. So this is really where students kind of tend to panic. They'll log into the Common App at the start of their senior year, and suddenly they have 20 essays ahead of them, and most of them are pretty specific, like, why did you choose this college? So if you don't get started on it early, you might panic. So how do we get ahead of these essays? Well, the fix is really kind of like working backwards in a way, but this is also where a little bit of organization in the beginning can really save the day. So I recommend students start by, of course, getting the Common App or the personal statement that's used in the Common App done and out of the way first, because that's the biggest component of college applications. But before you do this, you have to finalize your college list, like we mentioned before, because this is our foundation. This will help steer us in the next direction. The colleges you apply to will eventually dictate your eventual supplemental essays, because every school will ask for different supplemental essays. Then next, you need to build and finalize your professional resume. So you have this as a great resource to pull from. And also, some school-specific applications outside of the Common App, they'll ask you for an extended resume. Like, they want you to upload a resume. So if you have this done already, then that's super easy. But then you'll take this extended resume that you did, and there's tons of formats online, or if you work with a counselor at Moon Prep, we have formats. What's the word? It's not a format. It's template. A template.
Yeah. Got it.
Then you can take this template, this extended resume that lists out in extensive detail everything you've accomplished, like what AP courses you've taken, awards you've won, that summer at coding camp, just literally everything. And then you're going to have all the info compiled, and you can start on the Common App activities section. This essentially means you're going to be shortening that bigger extended essay into the Common App activities format of 10 activities. That's 10 activities with 150 characters total to describe them. And of course, You start with the extended resume first because then you have all of your involvements laid out in front of your eyes and also in your recent memory before you start working on all of your essays. So we're just like making sure everything's fresh. And then we're going to start making like a little list of all the different essays you have to write. So you write out all of your supplemental essays you have to write because of your college list. And then you write a short outline over which things in your resume that you want to cover in each supplemental essay. Many of these prompts will ask you things like, how did you choose your major? And so if you're, going into the medical career, you can clearly talk about your volunteering experience at a local hospital that led you towards medicine. Or they might specifically ask you, talk about a time that you demonstrated leadership, which would be the perfect time to talk about your role on student council. But if you've already talked about your role in student council in your Common App, you can't talk about it again and overlap in your supplemental essays. So that's why you write out all of your supplemental essays first, and then it helps you figure out like what's left, what can you write about in your Common App essay without overlapping and making it like too messy, basically. So then you can start brainstorming ideas for your Common App essay. And once again, every year we have students sign up with Moon Prep in their senior year with their personal statements like already done, and they want just like someone to edit them and then help them start working on their supplemental essays. And then they find out they have to completely rewrite their Common App essay because they used up all the subjects they have to use for those supplemental essays, and they freak out. So don't be like that. Essentially, you're using your supplemental essays, that list, to create a roadmap to your personal statement. Now, when it comes to the personal statement itself, it's really important to show your personality and be creative. So many students just aren't very skilled writers yet, and that's totally okay because you're in high school, you're not in college yet. But their essays tend to read like an extended resume. And I cannot tell you how many essays, I read as an admissions counselor that started off like, my name is Michaela, and for the past 2 summers, I taught piano lessons. It's just not like a thrilling opening. It's like, after you read like 40 of those a day, you're like, okay, we get it. But now imagine reading 20 essays like that and then flipping the page to read something new. When my fingertips touch ivory, I feel more at home than when I walk in my front door. It's a little more intriguing than just like, hi, my name is Michaela, I like piano. It's just a little more intriguing. So any chance that you have to brighten the reader's day really honestly stands out in the best way. And I also always have my students go through something called a grocery store analogy. It's a little mnemonic thing that I have every student look at. What I mean by this is that your essay is your only chance to show your personality. And we just did a personal statement webinar. So if you want to check out a whole hour on us talking about brainstorming, go to our resources page under our videos, and it's like I think it's the last one we did. So it's it was two ago. Two? Yeah, okay. It's very recent. You can check it out. It's the 2 of us again. You get to see our faces again. And we have a whole hour of talking about brainstorming and essay examples. So just, when you get to the end of this and you want to brainstorm, just head right over there, watch that video. But essentially, your essay is your only chance to show your personality. Otherwise, they just have a resume. Like there's no other place for you to like write and show your personality. So just imagine that your essay is essentially you walking up to someone in a grocery store and handing them your essay and asking them to contribute $20 towards your college fund. Honestly, that means that essay has to encompass everything that you feel like a college should know about you in order to accept you or give you money and a scholarship. So that's how that grocery store analogy works, is that it's kind of the way college applications work. You're just submitting an application, an essay off into the world and hoping they accept you based on this essay. So just make sure it's saying what you want. But let's see this in action of like how this actually works. We have a shortened version of an essay here, an essay example, because of course it's pretty hard to fit, 650 words on a screen and have you still be able to see it. So I know it's even already pretty small for you. So I'm going to read it off for you. So this is an example essay. Okay, I taught myself to knit as a way to connect with my grandmother, as age kept her from attending all of my school plays. After she passed, I continued knitting for the memories it held of us. After knitting myself a new fall wardrobe, she's a little bit of humor right there. I began knitting winter scarves and hats to donate during the holidays to my local homeless shelter, as well as knitting small bunnies and bears for a local foster home facility. So that's during the holidays. I also hosted knitting classes in a variety of churches and nursing homes to connect with new knitting enthusiasts or friends, whatever she said. And as I look forward to my college aspirations, I'm excited to pursue a major in education. I hope to continue to find new ways to connect with others, just as the simple act of knitting brought me closer to my grandmother in her last years. Okay, so why is this essay effective? Well, to be honest, like you just get to know her and her family in a few very short words. And honestly, she just kind of sounds like a good person by the end. Now, I wanted to make sure that I did not kind of capture a story that was like some unattainable, amazing story of someone escaping a war or something crazy like that. This is just a normal girl next door that did something worthwhile with a hobby, worthwhile with her time. By the end, you genuinely believe that she's going to do something great with her education. As she's proven, she'll probably do a lot of good with very few resources. And on a basic level, she's probably earned your $20 in the grocery store, right? Like you would just give her $20, you think she's a cool person by the end. And lastly, and most importantly, her ending ties back into her beginning, which leaves readers with a sense of satisfaction. That's another tactic I call the full circle approach. Make sure everything kind of like circles back to the beginning. So there's a feeling of like completeness when you get done, that there's nothing like left unsaid in an essay. So that is kind of like my suggestion on here's how to tackle an essay, because so many people are like, how do I do this? Where do I start? And my answer to that is try to do something that is like a full circle so it makes sense to the reader, as well as like make sure that grocery store analogy is in play. Like, does the reader just think you're a good person by the end? And then lastly, before you get started, go ahead and read a bunch of sample essays. You'll get a lot of suggestions and ideas and inspiration from just reading a bunch of other people's words. You'll know like what you don't like and maybe a format that like you really like and you want to try to turn into your, like reuse in your own words. Kind of some cool what's it called? Some cool like tools that other people use that you might want to repurpose in your own words and in your own life. So I just recommend all those things before you get started on your personal statement. But we're kind of done with talking about all the different action steps and things you should be doing right now. So I guess we're gonna wrap this up a little bit, and so start thinking of your questions right now.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone has any questions about anything related to college admissions, scholarships, personal statements, supplemental essays, schools, what's going on with COVID, some activities that we could be doing, shoot them here in the chat on the right side of the screen. And we'll be around for, the next, however long there are questions, essentially. So don't be afraid to ask some questions. But I wanted to leave you guys with some free resources, but also to remind you about the special. So remember, it's $150 for 1 hour. And you can use that hour however you want, no matter what year you are. So maybe you just want help brainstorming a topic, or you need advice over planning for college. Just feel free to reach out to us, and you can schedule that 1 hour session. And then we also want to give you some ways to contact our company for individual advice, and also offer a few of our resources. You can see one up here is our Eventbrite page on the right. It has all of our upcoming webinars. We still have 3 more this year, and maybe we'll add more kind of as demand sees it. And then, as Michaela mentioned, at the moonprep.com/resources, we have a ton of resources available for you. We do a lot of monthly newsletters. We do a lot of blog posts. So make sure to subscribe to our newsletters, to follow us on YouTube. We got a lot of really great information that we're trying to give out to people. So just join in, and we'll be happy to answer as many questions. I see we have a hello from someone.
Hi. Welcome. If you have a question, send it on in.
And now that we have some action advice for you and your family to kind of tackle together, just remember you're definitely not alone. We're here for advice. We have a ton of resources for you here, but we're really glad that you did choose to get some information from us. Oh, we have the start of our question. So yeah, go ahead and feel free to ask some questions. We'll definitely answer them. So we'll take your time typing it up. Anything else you want to add, Michaela?
We're just really thankful that you're spending your time on webinars like this and getting some information and just trying to be prepared for your senior year, or whether or not you're in your senior year or not. It's just really great to see that students and families are really invested in their futures and being so prepared. That warms my heart, and it makes things so much easier for us if you decide to work with us. Or I guess on you as well in your senior year. So we love seeing all of you engage with us and join these webinars. But we are ready for your question. Yay. Everyone always mispronounces my name. I get Michaela, Michelle, and so I'm like the worst at saying people's names, because I don't like people mispronouncing my name, and so I'm like even worse about it.
But we're ready for your question.
Yes. Send them in.
Yeah, I wonder what other knowledge we can give in the meantime. Oh, here we go. International student.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. It just came for me. Sorry.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, international student. I have difficulty picking also looking for international scholarship. So I'm going to cover a little bit about international scholarships in the webinar on the 23rd, but essentially there are a few websites that you can go to actually find international scholarships. For the most part, a lot of colleges, if you're planning on applying to the US, I guess I'm just assuming that. So if that's wrong, send it in. But there's this one website, which, you know what, after I'm done talking, I can like pull up that slide on the back end and see if I can find the name of it. But basically, there's like a website where you can literally type in like, I am in this country and I'm planning on applying to college in this country. What international scholarships can I apply for? So it's like it just lays everything out for you. For the most part, a lot of colleges don't have international student specific scholarships. Most international students, as well as out of state students, they're asked to pay like full price, or there's a little bit. Okay, so yes, you plan to apply to the US. Okay, perfect, gotcha. So most international students, their pricing is priced in such a way that like it's low enough, like it's low enough to be competitive, but there's very few international scholarships available. The reason for that is just like they have to have there's like colleges have so many rules as far as like they have to make sure that students can pay the full amount. Like essentially they have to make sure that like your family can pay the full, $40,000. Let's just say it's $40,000. They want to make sure that you can pay that. And if you've gotten a $20,000 scholarship and then somehow your GPA drops, then they're not guaranteed to be able to get that amount back. Does that make sense to you? So that's why there's very few international scholarships available, is because then they can't guarantee that if your GPA drops and you lose that scholarship, then that they're not going to be out $20,000 on like losing you as a student. So it's harder for them to do international scholarships. A way to get around that, though, is to apply to universities that have really strong programs in your major. So say you're going to go into like biology or like plant biology or something like that, they have a really strong program. And then you can apply for department scholarships. You can apply for a plant biology, they wouldn't be international, just a department scholarship, because the department isn't going to care where a student's from. They're going to have $10,000 and they just want to give that to the most qualified applicant. So they're not going to care who that goes to. So you have a better chance of those department scholarships. Another way to work around that is there's a whole list of schools out there. You can Google this and you'll come back with like a list and lists and lists of schools that have the same tuition for like non-residents, that's out-of-state students, and international students. So you're welcome. Like those schools just have lower tuition in general. For international students, those are usually like the larger state universities, like the Ohio State University. I'm not saying like that's one of them. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head. But so basically, like that's a really good route to go to, is you just know that you're getting the same rate as an out-of-state student, and so you're getting a lower rate in general. But okay, you plan to major in computer science. So yeah, you can just search for colleges that have the same tuition for out-of-state students or non-resident students and international students, and then also check to make sure that they have, you can check on niche.com which schools have strong computer science programs, and then you're saving money on the forefront, and then you're also applying for department scholarships in computer science. So that's helpful. Okay, so if anybody wants to send in another question, I'm going to try to look up that website real quick, and I can send it. I can say it again. So if anybody has another question, give me 1 second. I'm going to search up something.
No worries. Yeah, and even if you're a younger student and you have questions about maybe some activities that would be good for you, we can totally answer some questions on that. We did like a blog post a couple of weeks or months ago. I feel like time has no meaning in quarantine anymore. But we did one about that recently, coming up with some ideas. There's a lot of like virtual camps still going on. And so maybe right now during school is like the last thing you want to do is stare at a screen a little bit more, but there are a lot of really great opportunities there. And we can give some recommendations too if you send an email kind of with your list. We've partnered with some really great like science-based organizations, some great organizations that are more focused on like leadership, business, a lot of different things, so we can kind of point you in the right direction. But yeah, and there's a lot of ways. You don't have to be changing the world during the pandemic, but you definitely want to be still actively working during the pandemic to not only, building up your college profile, but, bettering yourself as a human being. And as the pandemic kind of is dragging on, there's a lot of time you'd be wasting if you weren't really doing anything. So we do definitely recommend that students are, thinking about how they can solve a problem within their own community.
Yeah.
You find the website?
I did. Okay, so what I'm talking about when you're searching for schools that have the same rate for international students and non-resident students, that is actually called banded tuition, and there's two schools that have as an example, and it's Southwest Minnesota State and Indiana University Bloomington. So schools like that, like some schools, of course, do have great scholarships for international students, and you can just search that. But these banded tuition schools, they have like overall tuition caps. So like their tuition can't go beyond a certain amount, which just kind of helps you in the forefront. And then that website is internationalstudent.com and then / scholarship. And they have over 1,500 scholarships that have unrestricted nationality and host country. So like going from one country to another is unrestricted. And of course they have like even more that are specific from one country to the US or whatever. And then a lot of them are specific to a major. So you can like literally search for like ones that aren't specific to a major, and then also ones that are specifically computer science for you. So that's super helpful. You can kind of search for everything you need on that website. And you can also search for websites like that. So, type that one in, internationalstudent.com/scholarships, but then also search for ones like that.
Oh, is it with an S again, Michaela?
What, sorry?
It is with an S. I didn't put with an S. I typed it in there, but I didn't
put scholarships. Sorry.
No, it's my fault. It leads you there anyway. If you type in what I typed in and put in the chat, it like automatically knows what you mean, and it will take you where you need to go.
I'm like, did I have a lisp?
I just am terrible at writing.
But yeah, I think just like honestly, choosing an affordable school in the beginning is really going to help with overall costs. And this means like looking at their housing, because like almost very, very few colleges have, housing and books and board scholarships. And so that's like $10,000 a year. So even just finding a school that only charges $7,000 or $8,000, that's saving you, $3,000 right there. So just try hard to like look at all the prices, not just tuition and not just international student tuition. Look at everything that goes into that. And then that'll just help you. Like that's the same as getting a $5,000 scholarship, if you just choose a school that has really good, like affordable tuition and then lower housing and board, you could essentially make your own $5,000 scholarship up front. So just really do a Google search, really do your due diligence on that college list, and it'll help you a ton.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think that's all the questions we have. And I know it seems like you guys maybe have another meeting coming up for y'all's organization, but you see Michaela's email on the screen, so feel free to email if you want to take advantage of the offer. If you have any questions, check out our website, hit subscribe here on our YouTube channel, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.